Oh, come on, you'll embarrass me. I'm shy, you know that. Good evening, Birmingham. You might have noticed I just arrived on a JCB. Now, JCB, as we know, make the most amazing machines. They're great in agriculture, they're great in building, they're great clearing landscapes. They are probably the most incredible private company in this country, if not one of the most incredible companies in the world. And we say a huge thank you to Lord Bamford tonight for lending us a JCB. Now, what is it? It's a Pothole Pro. Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about potholes. This machine can mend potholes at half the cost that currently is being charged by other commercial operators. And aren't potholes just the perfect symbol of broken Britain? So I thought coming in on a JCB with a machine that actually works and that county councils should use if they weren't tied in to 5- and 10-year contracts with inferior providers. But we'll fix that, won't we, when we control those county councils. So yeah, let's fix broken Britain, and let's start by making sure that reform local governments mend the potholes. Now look, this must be the most ambitious launch of any local election campaign in history, nay, probably the most ambitious launch of any even general election campaign in history. And hasn't it been incredible? Incredible. Dr. David Bull leaves me in awe. His timing, his humour, his use of these incredible props around the stage. David, you have been absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. I've never said that to him before, and I probably won't say it again, but he's been brilliant. So let's have a little think about what we've done over the last year, about where we've got to. On March 28th, 2024, Reform UK had 25,000 paid up members. Tonight, we have gone through 220,000 paid up members. We are now without doubt double the size of the Conservative Party and catching the Labour Party up first. And by the end of this year, I want us in membership terms and much else to be the biggest party in this country. That's clear. And this time last year, we didn't have any formal branches. We have managed, since August, when we really kicked off, we've now managed to set up 400 branches around the United Kingdom, all over. And you see, this is very important, because I said on the evening of the 4th of July, general election leading into the 5th at Clacton, where I got elected, having tried just once or twice before. I said I would professionalise the party. And I tell you what, we are vetting our local council candidates to a level that no party has ever done before. We are led in the office by young staff, all in their middle, late 20s, who are so dedicated and so professional that even when they got the call from me on the 23rd of December to say, sorry, boys and girls, but I'd like you to work on Christmas Day, they all did without hesitation. That is professionalism, that is dedication, that is what we're doing. And we brought some new great people on board. We have a new treasurer who has promised to raise us astonishing sums of money. Stand up, Nick Candy, wherever you are. And I chose a young entrepreneur in his late 30s who's got tech skills that most of us in this room wouldn't even understand, who's been very successful in business, to come and be the chairman of the party. And let me tell you, Zia has given dedication, hard work, belief, helping me, helping us do what we can do. Zia, as chairman, is an absolute superstar and has a major future in British politics. Where is he? Where is he? He's somewhere. I saw him in the green room. He's somewhere. I also said that I would democratise the party. Well, we've got a new constitution that was approved at the Birmingham conference. And there was much criticism that I own 2/3 of the shares in the company. But I did that when the party was young and small to make sure it didn't get infiltrated and taken over by bad forces. I did it deliberately. But now I know. Now I know this is now a mature grown-up, and the shares that I owned in Reform UK, I've given away, and you now own those shares as I promised I'd do. You own it. And we will, once May the 1st is out of the way, hold elections to have our first elected, organised board, professional board, that runs this party. I've kept every promise I made in the run-up to that general election and since, and I hope you have faith in me to believe that when I say something, I mean it and I keep my word. And we know why we're here. We know the values that bind us. And the remarkable thing about Reform is we cross every single segment of the British population. We've got older voters, we've got middle-aged voters, we've got young professionals, but increasingly we're seeing younger voters coming towards us. It could be maybe something to do with TikTok. When I'm met by protesters and I go, boring, 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 and the kids love it. And that's the great thing about a party that believes in meritocracy. We are not in the least bit interested how old you are. We couldn't give a damn what religion you are. We couldn't give a damn what your skin tone or colour is. We don't care about any of these things. We don't care about your gender. We don't care about your sexual preference. In fact, we'd rather not know, to be frank with you. We want to live in a country that treats everybody exactly the same, provided they in return respect us, our values, our laws and our way of life. So let's make this clear. I didn't come out of retirement last year with a few weeks to go before the general election. And by the way, I didn't need to. Life was going pretty well. Good job at GB News, who I think are a great broadcaster. I turned 60. First 2 grandkids were born. I was going back and forth to America because I've got some friends over there. One of them's quite influential. I didn't come back into this because I needed a career. I don't need a career. I don't need a job. I came back into this because I genuinely believe, and Aaron Banks touched on it earlier. Isn't it great? Aaron Banks, our candidate for West of England Mayor. God. The Guardian will be choking on their bran flakes tomorrow morning. I can't wait. I think the BBC might struggle a bit too. Oh, and Channel 4 News and many others. No, I came back into this, as Aaron touched on, because I genuinely believe that if we don't arrest the level of economic and societal decline that we are rapidly going into, that within a few years, this country won't even resemble anything that we've grown up with, that we love, and we're happy to share with others. But, however tough, however grim, however difficult, however depressing it may look, this party is full of optimism. This party is full of hope. This party is full of people who believe we can turn this around and get our country back on track with the right leadership, with the right politics, and we're determined to do it. Now, in life, it's quite important to be lucky with your opponents. Napoleon once said, "Don't give me good generals, give me lucky generals." Well, right at the minute, I feel like a lucky general. Because we have a Conservative Party. Well, we used to have a Conservative Party who for 14 years gave us the highest tax burden that had been seen since the war, did not, despite the promise in 2019 of giving us the Brexit that we voted for, never actually believed in it, and whilst we left, they didn't give us what we really wanted. A Conservative Party who told us in the 2010 general election they would reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year, told us in the 2015 general election manifesto they'd reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year, told us in the 2017, I sound like an auctioneer now, don't I? Told us in the 2017, yeah, mind you, if I'm an auctioneer and it's the Conservative Party, I'm not seeing many bids in the room, I got to tell you. Who told us in 2017 they'd reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year, and told us in 2019 they'd use those Brexit freedoms to reduce numbers coming in and to stop unskilled migration happening on the level that it was. And what do we get? Keep it clean, come on. What do we get? We got the greatest betrayal of a massive democratic majority that we've ever seen in our lifetimes. Net migration in 2023 alone is what net migration, not gross, net migration is 1 million people after all of those promises. And I believe the Conservative Party should never, ever be forgiven for that level of betrayal. But it could be that we're even luckier with our Labour opponents. Do you remember the big promises? Vote for us. Energy bills will be reduced by £300 a year. And yet from next week, energy bills would have increased by £300, not reduced, but increased by £300 since Labour came to power. They told us they were on the side of business. Yet, and this is incredible, this is truly incredible, not one of the 25 men and women that serve in this Labour cabinet, not one of them has ever founded a private company. Not one of them has ever worked in business. And the business secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, lied openly by saying he was a solicitor when he never ever qualified. What hope? What hope is there for 5.5 million men and women out there running their own businesses with this mob in charge? What hope is there? They haven't got a clue. And Rachel, well, it was Anderson, of course, that dubbed her Rachel from accounts. But now we learn she wasn't as good as that. She's actually Rachel from complaints. And what was given to us in the Commons this week was an Alice in Wonderland story. Let's be clear. Growth forecasts for this year have been halved without massive government borrowing and without mass migration inflating the population. The way we measure wealth on GDP is false. There is no genuine growth in this country at all. And I asked her a question in the Commons. The only way to measure growth is to measure your GDP per capita. Not to con yourself, because the population's rising by 1 million every year, and GDP per capita has fallen for 6 of the last 8 quarters. This country is getting poorer. Labour have absolutely no clue, no idea how to deal with it. They cannot spread optimism, I mean, goodness me, the front bench look like they're attending a family funeral. And then, of course, we have the issue that did perhaps more than anything to bring down the last Conservative government. And that was the flow of dinghies coming across the English Channel. Now, I'd remind you that I was pretty much on my own in 2020, going out into the Channel, making films, making videos, pretty much on my own. The Sunday Times said, what a sad, lonely, desperate figure I cut. Well, they probably had a point, but I was the one warning people what would happen. I was alone, telling people, unless you arrest this and deal with this, it will lead to an invasion of our country. I was condemned for the use of that word, but now, nearly 150,000 young men later, I have been proved right. And there was nothing the Conservatives could do. The Rwanda plan was doomed to failure because of our membership of a certain court in Strasbourg, which I might mention again in this little conversation. Smash the gangs was never ever going to work, and 2,000 young men have come in the last 8 days. That is unacceptable at every single level. None of them should ever be allowed to stay in our country. End of. End of. It's outrageous. And Labour also faced some other challenges. You'll notice They're now trying to be a bit more careful. They're talking perhaps about cutting a few benefits. So rather than the benefits bill going from 70 billion a year to 100 billion a year in 3 or 4 years' time, it might only go up to 95 billion. I don't call that cuts. I don't call that dealing with it. But the Greens are not going away. There is a young generation of people who have been, frankly, indoctrinated at university, who think we're all about to fry to a crisp in the next fortnight, and they will go on voting Green. The Liberal Democrats have consolidated their position in much of the country. But the really big threat to Labour comes from the group that called themselves at the last election the Gaza Independents. When I warned over a year ago, when I said that I believed that sectarian politics would come to England, literally nobody believed me. But it happened in the general election. 4 Gaza independents, in many cases fighting deeply unpleasant campaigns, won seats in Parliament from inner city constituencies. And I guess you can add Jeremy Corbyn to that lot and call them 5. Last night, in Redbridge, in East London, in the constituency of Wes Streeting, the Labour vote in a council by-election fell by over 40%. You might... No, wait for it. Where did it go? It went to a Gaza independent. And I believe in the next Parliament there'll be 25 or 30 people elected, and they'll come from the Burnleys, the Blackburns, parts of Leeds, parts of Keighley. This has all been caused by successive Conservative and Labour governments allowing mass immigration, I apologise, without integration. It has been irresponsible, it has been wrong. And I have been one of the few. I've been one of the very few people for the last 20 years. I've warned about this. I've been called all the names under the sun. We have, as I said earlier, no difficulty or problem with those from different countries or cultures or religions, provided if they live here, they live by our rules and our way. So look, I came back out of retirement to do this. I'm not mucking about. I've got one very clear, simple goal, and that is that Reform win the next general election and turn this country round. And a Reform government will leave the European Court of Human Rights. We will get rid of the Human Rights Act, upon which British lefty judges depend. We will, to be clear, and by the way, if you read different on X over the last few weeks, sponsored by Indian bots, I suggest you ignore it. I will reiterate, nobody that comes into our country on the back of a lorry or via a boat will ever be given refugee status, will ever be given leave to remain. Nobody. Nobody. It is unfair. It is wrong. It is also deeply unfair to those who have come here legally, and that's worth thinking about. And let me tell you, everyone that comes illegally will be deported, full stop, end of story. And the same goes for foreign criminals. I am sick to death of Article 8 of the Human Rights Act being allowed for people to stay here who've committed heinous crimes because they have a right to a family life. They've no right to a family life in our country. If they've come here illegally or they committed crime, they have no right at all. None. Zero. And we will end mass unskilled migration. The 10 million increase in the population over the last 20 years has made our roads impossible. Many who wanted to come tonight didn't make it because the roads were so full. It's made our kids' opportunity of getting housing impossible. And you want to know why you can't get a GP appointment? Because the population has increased by 10 million people. We will end mass unskilled migration into our country, stabilise the population, and we will do that. We will do that. And of course the truth is we now learn that all the arguments, well, Nigel, say what you want, but people coming in all work, they all pay tax, they all contribute. Well, try this for size. Of the last 3 million that were allowed in by the Conservatives, legally allowed in by the Conservatives under Boris and others, of the last 3 million that came in from outside Europe into Britain, only 22% are working, and we are paying for the rest. And we've had enough of it. It's making us poorer. It is unfair, and it will end. It will end. And we will cut taxes. We will cut taxes, especially nobody that earns less than £20,000 a year should pay any income tax whatsoever. Nobody. We are on the side of the worker. We're on the side of working people. We want to incentivise those on benefits to get off benefits and go back to work and not have this nonsense of if you work for more than 16 hours, you lose your benefits. No, £20,000 is the right place to start paying tax, not before. Let's make work pay. Let's be on the side of working people. Let's do it. And we will recognise that there are millions of people of above pensionable age in our country, many of whom have worked for this country, served this country in the armed forces or elsewhere, who, because they've got a small private pension pot, despite the fact it raises very little for the Treasury, have cruelly had their winter fuel allowance taken away. A reform government will give them back their winter fuel allowance. Inheritance tax is frankly wrong at every level. It's wrong at every level. You've paid tax during your lifetime, and now when you die, they want to tax your family and tax you again. It's wrong. And I have to say, the assault that is going on against our farmers and our rural communities is offensive in every way. It is disgusting, it is disgraceful, and we will abolish inheritance tax once and for all. And one more thing that you may need to think about a little bit more. It was announced today. Thank you very much at the back. It's very charming of you. Is that the best you can do? I had some proper protesters the other day in Doncaster. I enjoyed that more than they did. This morning the news was that Lakshmi Mittal, the 7th richest person living in Britain, is leaving. He's leaving. Jeremy Hunt, as Chancellor, Rishi Sunak before him, decided that what we had to do was to make sure that the highest earners, although who had so-called non-dom deals, would be taxed in a different way. Now, actually, you ask a focus group, should people who earn millions of pounds a year pay more tax? People say yes, but here's the problem. 10,000 millionaires left last year. And almost unbelievably, UBS Bank this morning estimates that 500,000 wealthy people, British people, will leave the UK before 2028. This is a disaster. This means our tax revenues will fall off a cliff. We cannot help those on benefits. We cannot help those on lower incomes. We cannot help those that need to access public services if we get rid of those that pay the most tax because they leave and go to Monaco, Dubai, America, or wherever else it is. We need to be grown up. We need to encourage people who've got money to come and live here and pay tax and subsidise our public services. Let's think about this. Let's use our brains. Of course, the media will say, how will you pay for this? Well, I tell you what, we need some pretty big cuts in the administrative state in this country, which has grown out of all proportion. Another 100,000 civil servants in the last few years, and they work from home 2 or 3 days a week. Well, I tell you what, with us, there'll be no more work from home. No more come to the office or you're fired. You're gone. And we want to stand up for those 5.5 million men and women running their own small businesses. We want to teach kids in school that hard work is necessary and important. And frankly, folks, what we need in this country to pay for the cuts that people deserve and need, we need a British form of Doge, as Elon Musk has got in America. Let's have a British Doge. Let's do it. And we will scrap the net zero lunacy that is destroying manufacturing jobs in our country. It's madness. British Steel today, as Richard Tice and I predicted, this country will no longer produce primary steel. We'll be the only major economy in the world not to produce primary steel. We don't produce the gas we need. We don't produce the oil we need. We, in Reform, will produce our own energy, manufacture our own steel, give consumers cheaper prices. We will re-industrialise Britain, get people back into good working jobs. And we will. So last week, lad gets in touch with me last week. He was 17. He said, look, I'm standing to be head boy in the school. Would you give me a video endorsement? I thought, I love the cheek of the guy. It's pretty cool, isn't it, really? In fact, I often get asked for this sort of thing, and there was a girl a few years ago that asked me for a similar message, and she now works for us in Parliament. So I give a big endorsement to this guy. Turns out that the academy school that he's at, a few days later, the teacher in charge of the school elections for head boy disqualified him as a candidate. And every week, I meet young people at school who tell me what the teachers have said about reform or me. And then I heard 2 weeks ago something that confirmed all my worst fears. The National Education Union, the biggest teaching union in Britain, led by a Marxist who says that Britain is an inherently racist and bad country. And they want teachers to indoctrinate our kids about how awful we are. They want our kids to be ashamed of everything that was done by our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and those that went before in 2 world wars and much else. And we, unlike the Conservative government or the Labour government, we have the conviction, the love of country, the courage to stand up and say, we are proud of our country. We are proud of its history. We will stand up and defend that to anybody. And we will. We will. We will go to war with the teaching unions that are poisoning the minds of our kids. We won't have it. We won't have it. So these are all the things that we want to do. But first we have to clear the hurdle of the 1st of May. Now look, I'm furious that 5.5 million people have had their vote denied as a result of collusion between the Labour and Conservative parties. Particularly unhappy in Essex, where we have 2 MPs and we would have won the council. But there's no point moaning, because in life you have to deal with the hand of cards that you have been dealt. Last year, Reform contested 12% of the seats that were up in that set of council elections last year. This year, we will fight every single council seat all over England that is up. We will fight the 6 mayoral contests, and you've seen the candidates on stage. And Parliament has its first by-election. The Runcorn and Helsby by-election will be held on the 1st of May, after, as David Bull said earlier, the Member of Parliament for that constituency decided the best way to engage a constituent at 2 a.m. was to punch him once when he stood up and 5 times on the ground. Well, we've chosen a lawmaker, not a lawbreaker, and Sarah Pochin, magistrate, successful businesswoman, successful local politician, I'm proud that she is our candidate in that by-election. Very proud. And it's Labour's 16th safest seat in the country. A journo said to me at the launch on Monday, well, this must be a must-win by-election for Reform. I said, no. I said, it's a must-win by-election for Keir Starmer. And I tell you what, I can't predict now today whether we're going to win. But tell you what we'll do, we'll run them down close. And if we do win, it will be an earthquake, and I'll be there, and I want you to come and help her if you live in that area, please. And just as we know that Britain is broken at so many levels, be in no doubt that local government is broken. Do you know there are 3,000 council staff in Britain earning over £100,000 a year? Now you might say that's okay if they're doing a good job, but are they doing a good job? Just think about this. Lincolnshire County Council is in debt to the tune of £460 million. But here's the kicker. The daily interest on that debt, daily, being funded by council taxpayers, it's £52,000 a day. Kent County Council's in debt to the tune of £740 million. £84,000 a day interest on that debt. I mean, I think when voters in Kent see this, they'll realise the Conservatives have not served them well. Cambridgeshire, their daily interest repayment is £89,000. But top of the pops is not a county council, it's one of the new unitaries that Angela Rayner wants to make sure that we all have. Yes, Cornwall went unitary years ago, and just that little county of Cornwall now has a daily interest bill of £147,000. It is totally and utterly beyond belief, but we're going to tell people the truth. And what about potholes? I bet every one of you in this room that drives has had a punctured tyre through potholes, and you're pretty cheesed off about it. And many, of course, self-employed people, van drivers, would lose income and money. It's costing us billions of pounds a year. I mean, in Nottinghamshire alone, there are 62,288 potholes. That's, 22 potholes every single mile. In Cambridgeshire, there are 64,000 potholes, 22 per mile. But no one gets close. No one gets close to County Durham. If you want to smash your tyres up, go to... Who's here from County Durham? How's your car tyres these days? I bet they're not too good. Because County Durham has 65,000 potholes, 27 potholes for every single mile. This, and I know there are problems. I know central government gives the counties and unitaries less money. I know that social care is a growing problem. But what all these numbers tell me on debt and on potholes is that, frankly, these councils have been asleep at the wheel. They've broken their counties, and reform is going to come in, and we are going to fix it. We are going to fix it. And the money, the money they're wasting. Kent County Council spent 330,000 quid on a cycle to work scheme for their own staff. Cambridgeshire County Council went nearly 600,000 over budget, building a waste recycling centre. Lancashire, oh, I love this one. Lancashire County Council spent £520,000 on a 4-year contract for ergonomic chairs for their own staff. Anyone know what an ergonomic chair is? I'm not sure that I do. Oh, you'll love this. Oh, you'll love this if you're from the West Midlands. Staffordshire County Council spent 18,000 quid on driving lessons for asylum seekers. I mean, I knew they got hotels, pocket money, dental care. They even get driving lessons in Staffordshire. And on it goes. Durham Council will spend 120 million in the next 5 years to achieve their net zero goals. Oh, no, they won't, because we're going to win Durham Council and cancel those contracts. And you realise the impact of what's happening when you see that Doncaster has had to spend 300 grand on translation and interpretation in the space of just 3 years. You think that's bad? Nottinghamshire County Council has spent £550,000 on translation in just 3 years. Lee, your county, almost unbelievable. And of course the green stuff just takes them all over, doesn't it? The city of Doncaster, where Red Ed is one of the local MPs, aren't they lucky? They spent 20 million quid on bicycle lanes with no increase in cycling capacity whatsoever. Devon County Council spent £250,000 on equality and diversity campaigns in the last 2 years? Well, I guess on Dartmoor, equality and diversity is really rather important. Shropshire spent £1,000 a day on a pothole consultant, yet has some of the worst pothole numbers in the country. Well, just come and see us and we can give you an answer. Because that's what we're trying to do. And the list goes on and on and on. We are fighting that election on May the 1st. I have been dedicated to it since the 5th of July. This is our first big hurdle. And we have to clear that hurdle. And clear that hurdle well. Just as we have to clear hurdles in the Welsh and Scottish Parliament elections next year and parliamentary by-elections that come. Nobody is pretending that any of this is easy. It isn't. We are taking on the vested interests. We are taking on the establishment. What we've done already is truly historic. But I believe our potential as the voice of the silent, ignored, put upon, and frequently insulted silent majority of this country. I believe that we are their voice, and I believe that we can make history in a way that perhaps has never, ever been seen before. When we win these county councils, we'll send in the auditors, we'll get rid of the fraudulent contracts, we'll cut spending, we'll do our utmost to fulfil all of our promises. And if we do those things, it will take us on. It will take us on to a general election which will come in 28 or 29, where we genuinely will try to make a piece of political history the likes of which has never been seen before. There are some who think that maybe I'm ridiculously ambitious, but I believe we can do this. Do you believe we can do this? Will you support this campaign leading up to May the 1st to help us clear this first major hurdle? Will you support our local candidates? Will you go out and campaign, knock on doors, deliver leaflets? Will you stand up if you believe what we're trying to do? Candidates particularly. These are our candidates. These are our people. All of you. We can do this. We are going to do this. We are going to make history, and each one of you is a part of it. Thank you very much indeed.